So I think we will get started now. Thank you everyone for joining. This is, of course, the North Coventry Township Environmental Advisory Council webinar series. Tonight we are very pleased to have Heidi Shiver, who is the president of Birdtown, Pennsylvania, here to talk to us about Birdtown and creating healthier communities through the lives of birds. I'm especially excited to welcome Heidi to our webinar series because back in August of last year, North Coventry Township became a bird town. And you might have to correct me here, Heidi. I think we were about the 87th or 89th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, John, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I should have
That
I
sounds
should have
about
looked
right.
it up.
That sounds about right.
I should have looked it up before. So we are now a bird town, and I wanted to do this webinar to kind of get the word out a little more and help others understand what being a bird town means, and to talk about what the program is about, and how it might benefit other townships and municipalities. So with that, Heidi, welcome and thank you very much. We look forward to what you have to tell us.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, John. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm really excited to spend the evening with all of you and share with you about our program. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started. Okay, here we are. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. If not, please let John know. Let me get started here. So I just want to go through the agenda. Before I do that, again, thank you again for having me. I'm Heidi Shiver. I'm from Birdtown, Pennsylvania. I'm the president of the board. And tonight I'm going to be sharing with you about our program. First, starting with a program overview, talking about the ins and outs of our program, how it works, and how it functions, and so on. Also, highlighting our Birdtown clutches. I'll have a chance to share with you more about that in a few minutes. And then also about bird towns in action. I'm going to be highlighting not only the bird town clutches and some of the work that we've been doing through that, but also with Upper Allen Township, which is in Cumberland County, and Doylestown Township in Bucks County. And then what are some of the actions that we all can take to support birds in our local bird towns? So I always like to start with our mission. Birdtown works in partnership with local municipalities and like-minded organizations to promote community-based conservation actions to create a healthier, more sustainable environment for birds, wildlife, and people. We've been actively engaged with municipalities in the state for more than 14 years now, getting close to 15 actually, and now we're across 17 counties. We are under the umbrella of Pennsylvania Audubon Council, and we're partnering with various conservation groups, including We Conserve PA, which runs the EAC network across the state, also over 9 Audubon chapters now, and the Bird City Network. So I want to just tell you a little bit about the Bird City Network. We're going to be integrating more fully with them this year. So there's little bird cities and bird towns sprinkled all over the United States, also down in Colombia and Mexico and Brazil now as well. So it includes over 275 communities. It's supported by the American Bird Conservancy and the Environment for Americas. And the network helps unite and connect all of us. We meet on a regular basis. It's really fun to get together and see what they're doing, what are best practices, what are best ways for us to be running our organizations and programs, and so on. And I'm really proud to say that we're one of the founding members of this network, and we're now the largest program in the network, therefore the United States. So really excited and proud of that. We are very much an expanding program. So more programs, more municipalities means more impact and support for birds and healthier habitats. I'm really excited to share that we have now 99 bird towns across the state, including 3 cities, Harrisburg, Easton, and Williamsport. So we are under the PA Audubon Council. So there are 20 Audubon chapters in the state. Like I mentioned, we're really working closely with 9 at the moment, and that's growing as we talk. The purpose of the PA Audubon Council is to serve the chapters and advocate for conservation and preservation for birds, sharing resources and ideas among the chapters, and working together to address conservation issues. We are under their corporate umbrella. They are a 501c3, so a state registered charitable organization, and we're working with them and the Audubon chapter network to help establish bird towns across Pennsylvania. So your local chapter here is Valley Forge Audubon Society, and they're a pleasure to work with, and so honored to be working with them as well. They are really one of the largest chapters in the state and cover over 1,200 square miles, including all of Chester and Delaware County, parts of Montgomery County, as well as parts of Philadelphia County. They're connecting with all ages. They have a very robust social media presence, and they do all sorts of amazing programming, including birding field trips, hikes, photography outings, boating events, webinars, and so on. And last year is actually probably the year before. They probably even did more last year, but they held 144 programs serving over 3,000 attendees. So, and also been a huge collaborator with our bird towns as well. They've been very helpful in supporting our local bird towns and providing birding walks for them. Also guiding and supporting several of the native plant sales, including down in Lower Providence and West Whiteland townships. They also supported a local bird festival this past year called Flocktoberfest over in Phoenixville Borough, and they brought games and information and hands-on activities. Sound like a lot of fun. And then they've also been supporting and communicating with our bird town, especially in Charlestown Township, with bird banding that's being done at Brightside Farm along with the PA Game Commission. So really grateful and thankful for the collaborations with Valley Forge Audubon and supporting the bird towns. So I want to talk a little bit more about why we're protecting birds and why that's so important. So pest control, birds control, very helpful with insect control. They eat anywhere from 400 to 500 million tons of insects a year. That's just mind-blowing how many insects that they eat. They also are very important for seed dispersal. Blue jays can hold 4 or 5 acorns in their beak, and then they can plant them just at the right level for germination. So they're very important. They're very, very important keystone species for helping support forest and plant growth. They're also very important for pollination, also scavenging carcasses, very important for nutrient cycling, and also supporting biodiversity. They also bring us lots of joy and beauty. They are really just incredible when you think about all the things that they can do. They can build a nest with a beak, not with hands. They can travel, like the red knot that I like to mention often, traveling close to 20,000 miles a year for migrating all the way from the Arctic Circle and then down to South America and back again. And they are just stunning. They're just gorgeous, the colors and all that they have. And they're everywhere. And we have over 100 million bird watchers in the US looking at them and enjoying them, and also spending $108 billion annually. Birds also let us know if the environment is healthy. They're sensitive to toxins and pollutants, and they can serve as an early warning system that there's something wrong in our environment. And that is definitely something that's bubbling up. As we see by the breeding bird surveys, population declines are ranging anywhere from 30 to 77% since 1970. And unfortunately, many of the bird populations are still falling, according to the 2025 State of the Birds report. So this is the report that came out just last year, or the year before, this past year. And what they found was that the key findings from the new report showed that more than 1/3 of US bird species are of high or moderate conservation concern, including 112 tipping point species that have lost more than 50% of their populations in the last 50 years. So not really great news. However, from that report too, that they did show that with conservation issues being addressed and addressing some of the problems that birds are having, that can make a difference in those populations. So one I'd like to mention is the evening grosbeak. So this is a bird I've yet to see. It used to be very prevalent here in Bucks County. It used to be large flocks, but they're down actually by over 90%. So 9 in 10 evening grosbeaks have been lost since 1970, which is really tragic. But there is being aware of that situation, there is a group called Road to Recovery. And this group is looking to try to determine what is causing this huge decline in evening grosbeaks. It's been really considerable, and doing some tracking and monitoring them to try to determine what the issues are for them. So that's, some good news there. So some of the major threats to bird populations are loss and fragmentation of habitat. We have over 40 million acres of lawns in the US, with 2 million here in Pennsylvania. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Other threats are cats. Cats are a really big one. 2.4 billion birds a year are killed by both feral and outdoor cats. Window collisions, that's also 1 billion birds die per year. This is another big issue. Birds are really confused by glass. When they approach glass, it's reflective, it's reflecting their habitat, so they just fly right into it. That's a big problem. Also, lighting's a big problem as well during migration time, especially, a lot of songbirds migrate, lifting off around 9 o'clock at night and fly all night trying to avoid predators. If they see lights, though, it can be distracting to them and they can be pulled down in the evening, and then the next morning when the sun comes up, they can find themselves in unsafe spaces and then have a lot of window collisions that way as well. Pesticides are a big problem, which I'll talk a little bit more in detail about. And then migration can be a problem when they're migrating. They can be out of sync with food sources that they're migrating back to their home areas to breed due to climate change. Invasive species also replace native plantings needed for food, shelter, and nesting. And then plastics are a problem for all of us. There's actually 4,000 I'm sorry, I'm trying to move this. I can read my slide here. Hold on. There's 4,900 million metric tons in our environment worldwide, and it takes over 400 years to degrade. So I wanted to talk a little bit about loss of habitat, which is the number one, well, probably one of the number one causes for bird population decline. So in our suburb and urban areas, there's really a lack of diversity. A lot of plantings that we have are exotic, and these are things that birds have not co-evolved with, and insects have not co-evolved with as well. There's also very little space for them for nesting and foraging and so on. Pesticides are also a huge impact on birds and insects. So this is some studies that I wanted to pull together for you tonight. So chicks living near farm fields treated with neonicotinoids, which is a type of pesticide. It's a family of neonicotinoids, and we have just really increased tremendously the amount that's going into our environment. But they found that if chicks living near these treated areas, actually in grassland environments, have half the body fat. Also, sublethal exposure to neonics causes disorientation and navigation issues for bees. It could also be for birds as well. And then finally, one ingested imidacloprid coated corn seed can kill a bird the size of a blue jay. So just one seed, which was just shocking to me. So pesticides are also a huge problem. And then also thinking again about lawns as well. That's another issue with all those lawns that we have. A lot of folks do use pesticides on those, which is also a big issue for bird populations. So Birdtown, Pennsylvania addresses these issues through engagement, education, encouragement, support, inspiration, and promoting awareness. These are a number of different actions that a municipality can choose to do once they become a bird town. They might be doing these things as well already. It can include installing demonstration native plant gardens, developing proclamations, resolutions, and ordinances to address some of these issues like invasives, native plants, and pesticides, supporting and running citizen science programs, working with schools to engage and educate them about these issues, and so on. What we do provide for municipalities is a statewide structured program with congruous goals, concrete resources and achievable actions, a framework for community networking with other bird towns and conservation programs and partners, and also free training and workshops for our bird town leaders, and then more opportunities and success in obtaining funding. We have a really beautiful website that includes a rich array of resources. It's a great landing page not only for our bird town leaders, but also for homeowners and property owners. We have a list of all our conservation partners and bird towns, and then we've created a special back page for our bird town leaders where they can find contact lists not only for our program, but other programs. All our workshops and meeting recordings are there. And also we have an extensive library of proclamations, resolutions, and ordinances, and so on. We also find that it's very important to have a number of touch points for our bird town leaders. So we have a number of communication and networking opportunities, including our bird town flyer. This is our bi-monthly newsletter for bird town leaders. This is a chance for bird town leaders to learn about what's going on in the program overall, what kind of meetings are coming up, what kind of workshops are coming up, and so on. Also, Bird Beat is our community newsletter. This is a quarterly newsletter to inspire and inform residents about actions they can take, and it provides seasonal tips. And then finally, we have the Birdtown Forum. This is a private Facebook page. We have close to 300 members now, and it's growing. And this is a place where Birdtown leaders can share about upcoming events and inspirational material. So just another shout out for Birdbeat. This is our quarterly newsletter that I just mentioned. You can access this and sign up for this if you have interest. If you go onto our website and page all the way down at the very bottom, there's a little form to fill out. Also, about our free workshops, this is our series so far for 2026. We have a couple more that we're working on. But coming up in February, we have working with Michael McGraw. He's going to be talking about how we can support birds, species of greatest conservation need, like we were just talking about. Then in March, we have the Tri-State Bird Rescue and Research is coming out to share with us about how we can properly rescue birds, and then also what their process is. These are, by the way, all virtual, so they won't be coming out, they'll be coming virtually to us. And then in September, we have Rob Christopher from Easton, the city of Easton. They've created an amazing microforest there, and so he's going to be sharing with us about how they've done that, and they've actually created a really awesome guidebook about it as well. So that's our workshop series for this year. We're really fortunate. Penn Community Bank, we had developed a relationship with them, and we were really fortunate to have a number of employees come out on their employee service day back in 2023. So they came out to Doylestown Township and Chalfont Borough to do amazing invasive plant removal. In Doylestown Township, we removed over a football field of burning bush, And in Chalfont, they worked on multiflora rose, which was so kind of them. And then they surprised us with a $10,000 donation. So with that donation, we offered 11 mini grants, and this is all the different bird towns that received funding. The funding was used for many of them for creating demonstration native plant gardens, doing some educational signage, holding a raptor demonstration, and so on. And this is some more highlights of this. So this on the left here is where they were removing the multiflora rows. Here's a beautiful garden that was installed at the Abington Library in Montgomery County, where it's a parking lot area. Here down at the left is from Concord. Concord worked together with their bird town to create a number of really beautiful birding signs about the birds that you could find in their parks. Then here is down in Doylestown Township, where they were removing the burning bush. And then finally, here is from the educational series that they put together for Birds to Lehigh Valley. This is for children. Every single month they offered programming through using the funds from the mini grant. So another way that we were interacting with businesses as well is we created a Bird Town sponsorship program. So this was something that we've created. Businesses can come in anywhere from as low as $100 to $1,000 or more. And these are all the different things that they can receive by becoming a Bird Town sponsor. So I'm very excited to share that Wild Birds Unlimited in Buckingham Township in Bucks County, they became our first bird town actually just in December. You can tell by the decorations from the photo here. But they're sponsoring Buckingham's bird town at the very generous Eastern Bluebird level. So they are really close by. They're going to be working very closely together of how they're going to be using those funds to create healthier habitats within their bird town. So really super excited about this. And I'm also very excited to announce that we just found out last week that we're receiving a DCNR C2P2 grant. So it's a matching $26,700 Community Conservation Partnership Program grant. It's a matching grant, so it's a total of actually $67,000 for the project. So the funds will be used to provide $31,000 mini grants for bird towns to conduct community-based projects. So that's why I mentioned the mini grants from before, is we really learned that whole process. We create an application process, a rubric, and so on, of how to evaluate the application. So with that, we were able to take that knowledge and lessons learned to apply for this grant. I'm really super excited to be able to have this opportunity again to offer more funding to more bird towns for this coming year. With those funds too, we'll be supporting 2 in-person regional bird town clutch meetings per clutch for the year. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about what those bird town clutches are all about. So a little bit more about the program. We are organized into 4 categories. We are called strategies. We just are changing our terminology to be more in sync with Bird City Network as we integrate more fully with them. So our categories now are creating and protecting habitat, addressing threats to birds, educating and engaging people, and promoting sustainability. So this is the requirements, and this is what it kind of teases out to be. So these are the 4 categories at the top. Then these are the different best practices that we can do under these different categories. So for habitat, for example, this would include promoting native plants, controlling invasive plants, providing nesting habitat, for example. Best practices for addressing threats to birds would be addressing things like collision with glass, light pollution, other human-related threats such as lead poisoning. We're also a 4-tiered program, so we have 4 different certification level requirements. All municipalities start at the green level, so they'll go through an application process, which includes forming a bird town committee of at least 3, paying a one-time application fee, which helps offset our cost. Each bird town receives 2 beautiful aluminum signs, which are $60 a piece, so this helps offset our cost for that. They'll complete the application, submit the application, and then also pass a resolution. Once they're a bird town, they have a whole year to move on up to bronze, silver, and gold. And so they would be completing actions in 2 of the 4 categories. For bronze, for silver, 3 of the 4, and then gold, they'd have to do actions in all the categories. Then we share how many actions need to be completed completely across all the different categories. And then also highlighting our bird habitat recognition program, which I'll be sharing with you in a minute. So we do have an annual report process. All annual reports are due January 31st. So we're right in the middle right now of collecting all our annual reports from everyone that's currently a bird town. This is just to make sure that we have accountability and transparency about what folks are doing in their municipalities for bird town. This is our new categories, goals, and actions worksheet. So we've had this worksheet that's just been tweaked a little bit with terminology and so on, and under the new categories. But these are under each category, there's the goal, and then under the goal, we provide provide suggested actions of what a bird town can choose to do. This is a really helpful document, I think, for our bird towns to use as an inspiration and guidance as they make planning and do planning for the year. It's also numbered and color coded for easy tracking. So with that in mind, our last annual report, which was last year in January, this was the results of that report. We had 51 bird towns at that time submitting a report. 10 of our new bird towns, they reported well before the year was over that they had a whole year to do. And I was really excited to see that we had over close to 28,000 volunteer hours from that report. So really impressed and proud of all the work that our bird towns are doing. So if you look at what that value is at the $31 an hour decided by the state, was over $868,000 worth of in-kind work and value to our volunteer hours, which I think is really important to share. You know, so many of us, especially our bird town leaders, are working so hard doing really difficult things like pulling invasive plants and planting natives and so on. So it's really important to show them how much the value is in so many different ways. We also had 16,000 volunteers. We impacted close to 900,000 community members. Over 8,000 acres are being actively managed to provide habitat for birds and other wildlife, and over 6,000 native trees and shrubs were planted in bird town communities. I think these are just really important numbers to share and show the impact that our bird towns are having across the state. And then finally, just to be clear about our municipal application process. So first, you start by meeting virtually to go over the process and go through the municipal application toolkit. This is usually with me via Zoom, just to talk about how the program works and go through the different components of the toolkit. Creating a bird town committee, like I mentioned before, passing a municipal resolution just to demonstrate support for the bird town program across the municipality. You want to make sure that someone's just not acting alone and everyone's engaged and aware of what's happening. Again, I had mentioned before the application fee, then completing the application, and then sharing what your municipality has already accomplished and future goals are, and then finally submitting the final version of it so it can be reviewed by our bird town outreach committee. And we really encourage folks to have it in by the last day of the month so we can review it at the beginning of the month. So that's the process. All right, I'm going to move on to bird town clutches. So this is our regional network. We do a lot of work virtually because we're a statewide program. So I think it's really important for us to come together when we can in person. So this is why we created the bird town clutches. So what we do is organize it by the different territories of the Audubon chapters that we're working with. So here for North Coventry area, we call it the Valley Forge bird town clutch. And we do also work, very closely with Valley Forge Audubon as well as part of our bird town clutches. But what basically is we come together once or twice a year. The bird town leaders come and they have a chance to meet each other, do some networking, also share about the work that they're doing, and then hopefully have something fun to do or have an interesting topic that we want to focus on. So in 2024, we focused on riparian buffers, for example. These are some images of some of the meetings that we had. So here we had Liberty Bird Alliance. We visited a number of different watersheds, learning about 3 different riparian buffer projects. Up in Lehigh Valley, we met up at Kutztown University. And again, we visited some really interesting habitat restoration projects that were going on. And then in Bucks County, we met at Bucks County Audubon, did a bird walk for fun. And then we also visited the riparian buffer project, learning about what they were doing and how it was impacting the bird populations in that area. And then also there's not only clutches, but also mini clutches. So in Delaware County, they were very creative there. For the bird towns, came together and created a mini clutch. So they're meeting quarterly and having some seasonal meeting to do sharing news and network with each other and also do some planning for joint programs. They're also looking to expand and invite other bird towns located nearby. But I just want to share with you some of the work that they were doing. So they had one all about owls in February, a couple years, like I say, about a year ago. They had 80 attendees. They also did a bird walk series in Delaware County, at a number of Delaware County hotspots. And they coordinated again with Valley Forge Audubon Society. You can see how important that relationship is. They also had a saw-whet owl banding that they participated with Doylestown Conservation Trust. And then finally, they really worked hard on this one, especially, called Building for Birds. They held this in January. It was a nesting box workshop. They built over 17 different nesting boxes for 8 species. They had 43 participants, 14 volunteers, and they spent 68 hours doing this. And they had some really great partnerships. They work with Newland Gristmill. This was especially, these boxes were especially for Newland Gristmill. Again, there was Valley Forge Audubon Society and then the bird town clutches. and they had Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts helping as well. So just some really great work along with our bird town clutches. More specifically, I went to kind of zero in on a couple bird towns and different things that they're doing. So we're going to look at Upper Allen Township. This is in Cumberland County, right outside Harrisburg. So they had a number of big projects. They had a pond, Grantham Pond upgrade. So they did some improvements along the pond banks to encourage native plant growth and creating healthier habitats for insects and wildlife. They also built some duck houses and bird houses and are conducting some bird walks there. Another project they did, this was a big one, a sensory garden. So they planted a lot of native flowers and nectar plants for hummingbirds and pollinators. Also fruiting shrubs and trees like elderberry and serviceberry for birds that especially like berries like our thrushes, robins, and waxwings. And also seed producing plants like sunflowers and coneflowers for those seed loving birds like our finches and sparrows. So it was just a really impressive project. And then finally, they have the New Generations Park. They're really, again, really thinking about, as a bird town, the different components of their park and how they can support different types of birds in different parts of habitat. So they, addressed open meadows and grassland to attract ground nesting birds. So really being aware of and careful how much they're mowing and when they're mowing. Also tree-lined trails that offer perches and nesting for different species of birds like warblers and woodpeckers. Mixed vegetation layers, making sure there's lots of different shrubs and ground cover for different birds and biodiversity. And then clear areas where bird watchers can even observe them and appreciate them. So I just thought those were very thoughtful projects that they did around their community and keeping in mind as a bird town what they can do to support bird populations and species. In Doylestown Township, this is my township, and I just want to share a couple of things we've been working on. So we held a presentation about birds, insects, and native plants at our local HOA. We've really been trying to engage with HOAs. We do have a bird town neighborhood application. So there are so many HOAs. I just find that this is a great place for us to really have a huge impact potentially. So with this particular HOA, we did have this presentation and we distributed 50 free native plants. Folks are really super excited about it. We've done a number of more presentations with them, and they've actually installed some native plant demonstration gardens for their local residents, and they are actually looking to apply for a bird town neighborhood application. So I'm super excited about that. Also in our township, we passed a Lights Out program resolution. We're actually now looking to do a Lights Out ordinance. We just started talking about that, so I'm excited about that. We also passed a single-use plastic ban, and we also monitor over 18 different nesting boxes using Nest Watch. We had 53 fledglings from 10 eastern bluebird families and 6 tree swallow families. So it was really exciting. And then we also did a partnership with the YMCA and the Girl Scout troop. So we had a Girl Scout troop reach out to us looking to do a silver award project. They really wanted to do a bird-friendly garden. So I thought it would be really good to maybe do it at the YMCA so it would have high visibility. So we created a bird-friendly native plant demonstration garden. We had a lot of meetings with the troop and the YMCA staff, and we're developing educational signage. The sign should be delivered hopefully in the next week or so, and also put a web page together. The girls learned really a lot. I visit with them a number of times, share with them a lot of things about what's important for a bird-friendly garden and what birds need and so on. And they were very interested. They also did a little bit of monitoring for me for the nesting boxes. So I think it was a really good experience for everybody overall. So I wanted to share what we can all do to help bird populations. So I just want to make sure, really to talk about, the really important thing about native plants. I've mentioned native plants a number of times tonight, and why are native plants so important for bird populations? So our native insects have co-evolved with our native plants. And insects really are, they're very specialized. They can only, use 2 or 3 different host plants to lay their eggs and so on. So the more native plants we have, the more food we have, the more insects we have. And so it's very important to have those native plants in our gardens to really create and make up for the loss of habitat that we have to really connect those fragmented sections and create those green quarters that we so need by planting native plants, shrubs, and perennials. And why is that so important to birds is because 96% of all North American birds really rely on caterpillars, those insects. 96% of them do. So just to put that in perspective, a chickadee, for example, one of their broods requires 9,000 caterpillars to feed a clutch of baby birds. 9,000 caterpillars is a lot of caterpillars. So if you line them up it would be 3 football fields long of that many caterpillars. Just to try to put it in perspective, it's hard to imagine how many caterpillars, but you really want them also not to be flying so far. The more that they have to travel back and forth to feed babies, the more tiring and exhausting it is for them and less likely for their clutch to be successful. So it's really great if you can create a habitat that's really not a sink, but actually something that can really support a healthy habitat, a healthy ecosystem to support as many bird species as possible. So I hope that makes sense about the natives. So we really want not yards to go from this to this, really to have be filled with native plants, have spaces for birds to nest, to have shelter from predators, have lots of food, so they don't have to travel far for when they're providing food for their babies and for their nesting for their brood. So you really want to be planting native plants, shrubs, and trees with high wildlife value. So we don't have a ton of time tonight, but this is one of my favorites. This is a serviceberry. This is what it looks like in the spring. It has these delicious berries that are even yummy for us as well, but the birds love them. I always have a lot of robins eating them, or I know the mockingbirds really love them. So they have really great, tasty berries. This is the beautiful color that they have in the fall, and they feed over 42 different species of native birds. This is a beautiful image that I found, getting ready for this presentation, but the more diversity that we have, the more diverse bird populations and insects that we have in our spaces and our properties and our parks and so on. So I just thought this was very inspiring to see all the different kinds of vegetation, native vegetation that we can provide in our communities. So I want to turn to our backyard habitat recognition programs. There's a whole bunch that we can choose from. These are really great assessment tools and ways to engage and be involved, within our community. So you can use these as an assessment tool to look at your property and see what you can be doing to improve upon it, or maybe you're doing an amazing job and you pat yourself on the back. But I just find that these are really helpful tools, and I want to especially focus on the bird habitat recognition program. So this is a program that started with Birdtown way back when we started. And this is, again, a program that really focuses on birds, as well as it's a Pennsylvania-only program. It's the only program out there that focuses on birds. And it's a chance for really to assess your property and see, are you providing enough food, water, shelter, and nesting for birds? It's, really done on your own. This, I really encourage you to take a peek at this. You get a beautiful sign afterwards if you choose to, which helps to have, promote conversation with your neighbors about what you might be doing in your yard. Also, citizen science programs are another really great way to be engaged and be thinking about birds. Project Feeder Watch, eBird, the Great Backyard Bird Count, these are all great programs, and they're coming up right now. Project Feeder Watch started back in November, and it goes through February, actually through April, sorry. And the Great Backyard Bird Count is coming up in February as well. So I encourage you to look into those a little bit more. These are just fun ways to be, engaged, seeing what birds are coming to your feeders, entering that information and data so that we can learn more about the different populations and how bird populations are doing within your communities. So I just put a couple of things here I thought would be helpful to mention tonight, and that would be removing Nandina. This is also called heavenly bamboo. So it's not the typical bamboo that you think of. This is a very beautiful ornate plant that we find in our community spaces, home environment spaces. But I just want to get a shout out about this because I love cedar waxwings. So I'm just going to read this. A flock of cedar waxwings can strip the fruits from a Nandina bush in minutes. But as the fruits are digested, they slowly release cyanide in quantities that overwhelm the bird's ability to detoxify it. So some birds, this is not an issue, but the way that cedar waxwings especially feed, they're very intense. They'll eat a whole bunch at once, and they eat so many at once that they can't detoxify in time and they'll die. So a whole flocks have died from just eating these berries. So I just want to bring this to your attention. If you have this in your home space or you see it in your community, be thinking about how you maybe can consider replacing this plant with maybe a really wonderful native bush like winterberry. That would be a great choice instead. Another thing to consider is a brush pile. This is a really easy thing to put together. Just put some, we've had so many windy storms. There's a lot of branches down. This would be a great time to pull those branches together. So it explains how to do this. So you put your larger branches on the bottom, smaller twigs on the top, leave some gaps for entry, and it can support over 50 different species, anywhere from rabbits, wrens, and foxes. So this is a perfect time to provide shelter for the animals right now, especially with it being so cold. And then another one is, a lot of us love having our bird feeders out. I certainly do, but it's something to consider too is really making sure that they stay clean. So it's really recommending that feeders should be cleaned every 2 weeks with a 10% bleach solution. You want to make sure that you rinse them thoroughly and dry them completely. You want to discard any wet or moldy seed immediately. And if any illness appears, remove the feeders for 2 weeks to break any current transmission. So just want to give a shout out about keeping those feeders clean. So, and then closing tonight, then I want to talk about how to support our local bird town, and then also continue to support bird populations. So creating bird-friendly habitats with native plants, reducing hazards like window collisions and strikes, also reducing pesticides. Think about turning your lights off after 9 p.m., especially during migration, like we talked about earlier. Keeping those cats indoors, not only good for the birds and wildlife, but also for the cats themselves. It's healthier for them. Drinking bird-friendly certified coffee. That's a whole nother story. I can mention just this really quickly, but as our birds that are here are migrating down south, they're coming into habitats that are being destroyed for creating coffee. So bird-friendly certified coffee is actually making and encouraging farmers to maintain the habitat and actually growing the coffee in shaded grow coffee and maintaining that habitat. So that's really why that's so important. Participate in those fun citizen science programs, educate your neighbors about these different things, support your local Audubon chapter. That Valley Forge Audubon chapter is great. And they have so many amazing outings. Really be sure to check out their website. Also consider volunteering for community plantings, invasive removal and events. Share about the events that you hear about, and even attend them and have some fun. So that's my presentation for this evening, and I look forward to seeing if you have any questions for me.
We've got at least one question that's been entered into the chat. I would encourage everyone, if you do have a question, type it into the chat, and we will do our best to answer that. Well, I just want to say thank you very much, Heidi. That was very informative. It's interesting. Even the North Coventry Township is now a bird town, and there's still so much going on at so many of the other, just within the statewide program and with so many of the other bird towns. I was actually surprised to hear how much is going on. No wonder you're so busy.
No, I mean, I'm just so impressive how many, what everyone is doing. Just very passionate. The folks that are bird town leaders are very positive, very passionate about the work that they're doing, and so creative too, John. Just, I had this huge list of like hundreds of different things, but everyone thinks of even beyond, outside the box, coming with just amazing ideas. Like Flocktoberfest just bubbled up out of Finningsville Borough. It was so unexpected to learn about that event, working with the local church, and really was just an amazing event that they put together. So just story after story, I just so always thrilled to see what everyone's doing.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So we did have a question from Bill. Bill asked a question about the neonic insecticides. He says, can you give us an example of a neonic and how they are used?
Sure. So this is usually around GMOs. Actually, you've heard that that term of genetically modified plants. The reason they're genetically modified so that they can manage a large amount of pesticide on them. So farmers tend to use them. And it's a way to spray pesticides over the vegetation so that they don't have to handpick them. So farmers tend to use them. Homeowners can use them as well, but they're just very toxic. And they do affect migration, especially like with them. They've noticed that with insects, but I suspect it also would affect bird migration as well. It is a neurotoxin that they're using, so it's a concern too that the impact that they have on humans as well. But Bill, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I don't know of any. I mean, I know of the class of neonicotinoids, excuse me, but I don't know of any different individual agents per se. But I know one of the things that they often do is seeds that are going to be cultivated are coated in a neonic to prevent them from being consumed before they're in the ground and growing. But they're also, if I remember right, I think they're very water soluble. And so as that seed germinates and the plant begins growing, and of course, rain or irrigation, the water will dissolve the neonic, and it will actually get distributed into the rest of the plant. So it's not just affecting the seed, but affecting that whole plant, and potentially any insect or bird that interacts with that plant in any way, including a potential pollinator.
But yes, it's in the pollen as well of the plant. It's in all aspects of the plant.
Right,
And it's
right.
also water soluble, so then it also gets into our water systems as well. So it's a big problem. And like you
Mhm.
said, the seed being coated, like I mentioned, just one seed, if a blue jay eats it, can kill one blue jay. So that's a really toxic little coated seed,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And we're using a lot of neonicotinoids. Just the amounts that we're putting into the environment is just incredible to me. And you can look at the charts. The more that we put neonicotinoids, you can see those bird populations declining as well. So, that could be a big contributor as well to bird population declines.
Ashley just wrote into the chat and said, I just wanted to say hi. I'm your
Yay.
Flocktoberfest person from Phoenixville.
Hey, Ashley.
Hi, this is
Lives in
great. Thank you
Northtown.
for this.
It was extra cool to check this out.
Yeah, thank you so much
Thanks,
for being
Ashley.
here. She and I had
Yeah, I appreciate it. I got some good screenshots, some really great info, the
oh,
PowerPoint.
good.
So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. No,
Appreciate
we,
it.
we had a chance to talk a couple weekends ago. I wanted to learn more about it just happened. It was a happenstance that I came across it. And it was just such an amazing program that you guys put together. And so happy
Oh,
that Valley
thank
Forge is
you.
supportive. And thank you again for all your work. And like I
And
shared with Ashley, I hope other bird towns will learn from her and
oh,
also continue doing or consider do some really fun festivals like that you put together.
yeah, likewise. Well, thank you.
Thank you for the inspiration.
Yeah, no other questions in the chat at this time.
Okay. Well, listen, John, it was so fun. It was so fun to be with all of you this evening and sharing about the program. If you have any questions, reach out to me. My email is pabirdtown@gmail.com. Always happy to talk with anyone. And, thank you again for this opportunity.
And thank you for presenting to us, Heidi. Thanks everyone for joining us, and happy New Year, and wish all of you good bird watching.
Yes. Happy bird watching. Take care.
All right, take
Thank
care.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.